Would that be important? Well, when you're prepping and you're stocking and storing, you need to know what you're doing. This right here is just a little Coleman propane 1-eye stove. Boil water in. I actually use this one to like boil water to dye a bunch of stuff, bandages or whatever I need to do, whatever I'm building. But anyway, there's 91,502. Now you can go online and you can see this number will change. Because I was looking last night and I learned it, when I learned it years ago, I learned it as 91,502 by the American Gas Association. But online, you get a bunch of different answers for that. I'm going with 91,502 because that's what I learned. A BTU is a British thermal unit. It is a way of measuring. It's a unit of measurement, like an inch or a foot or a yard or a mile. In 1 gallon, there's 91,000. Now this eye right here burns 10,000 BTUs an hour. So if I light this, actually it's hot. If I lit this, it would burn 9 continuous hours, and I would use 1 gallon of propane at 1,502. Now, a big thing that a lot of preppers have, a lot of people have is a EnviroTemp or EcoTemp. EcoTemp, hot water heater. It's one of the things where you hook the garden hose up to it, and you hook your 20-pound propane cylinder to it, and you got a shower, big shower, hot shower. That thing burns 37. Ooh, there's a podium there. It burns 37,500 BTUs an hour. So I could burn that thing if I had a family of four, and we every member of that family took 1 shower a day, 5-minute shower, that's 20 minutes a day. 20 minutes a day, I could burn a gallon of propane 8.2 days. So at a gallon of propane, I would have 8 days worth of showers. Okay? A 20-pound propane cylinder has 4.4 gallons, 4.4. Now that may vary according to altitude, but 4.4 gallons of propane in a 20-pound propane cylinder. So you can keep breaking it down and doing the math and doing the formulas. Scott's always aggravating me about my formulas, or about his formulas and my lack of. There's 4.4 gallons. So 8 times 4 is what? And that's how many days worth of showers you've got in a 20-pound propane cylinder. That's, you can figure it up at 10,000 BTUs, and 10,000 BTUs is the average for like a camper. If you've got a camper or an RV, you've got a propane cook stove at the house, it's going to be 10,000 BTUs. That's pretty much an industry standard. So 10,000 BTUs. In 4.4 gallons, you can determine how many days you've got of propane. So anyway, that was free. I threw that in. But that's just a little tidbit about propane. Okay. I don't think I had any announcements at this point or anything to say. At this time, I'm going to introduce Mr. Scott Hunt. He's on YouTube as Engineer 775. He is the smartest man I know, and I know this because we were just backstage and he told me this. He said, you know, I am the smartest man you know, and he's a great man. He said that too because he said you all are so beneath me. So anyway, without further ado, I would like to introduce good friend Mr. Scott Hunt.
Yes, thank you, Richard. Richard and I have known each other for a long time now. He's what makes these conferences a lot of fun, amen? It helps out Jan and the crew a lot. So I know a lot of familiar faces. I've seen a lot of friends here today, and I know some of you might not know me. As Richard said, I'm Engineer 775 on YouTube. A lot of people don't know me as Scott. They know me as Engineer 775, and that's fine. YouTube has been just an awesome venue for me to share what I've learned over the last 20, 30 years on my farm, and then taking it beyond the farm to other people's locations. We've heard a lot about threats this morning, and I'm not going to focus on any of those. I'm hoping to just offer some solutions that might be helpful for you in your location, your neighborhood, your community. One of the common things that I kept thinking about with Dr. Forstchen and Forrest and everybody that was bringing up different ideas, different threats, they all have something in common. And to me, what that common thing that they have is that it's all things that can affect a centralized system, whether it's water distribution, fuel distribution, food, it's all centralized systems. So for the last, I would say 15 years, I've been working on decentralizing solutions, coming up with solutions that work for you at your home, whether it's a tiny house or a mansion or a farm or your neighborhood or a community. I've met with so many different groups, prepper groups and survivalist groups, and the whole goal for me is to decentralize their infrastructure, to be able to do everything that you need to do on this particular piece of property you've landed on. And I also just want to say, make sure you prep where you are. I know a lot of people, I've even met a couple families today that said, you know, we want to move up here, we want to move up here. You need to prepare where you are right now. You just don't wait till you find that perfect piece of land, because it might not happen. So I encourage you to prepare. So I think my presentation, is this thing, how are we doing here? Warming up? We're back to fireworks. And it's 91,333, Richard. There we go. And a BTU is a British thermal unit. It's taking a gallon of water and how much energy it takes to raise that gallon of water 1 degree Fahrenheit. So that's what a British thermal unit is. And it's used in air conditioning, it's used for water heating, used in a lot of different ways. It's used in this building. Everybody knows that the air conditioner works in here, don't they? So there's a lot of BTUs being pushed into this room today. So a lot of ways, if I don't answer your question or don't cover a subject you wanted me to, you can get in touch with me through YouTube, through email, through our website, phone calls, you name it, text me, whatever. There's a lot of ways to get a hold of me. So I think this is working. Yeah. Okay. And before, I've forgotten to tell people about this so many times. This has helped a lot of people that I've met, a lot of preppers, even though these are government programs. They've been very beneficial with helping people get started in areas that they've never ventured into before, like growing food or raising livestock. And the NRCS is the National Resource Conservation Service. How many people have taken advantage of it? Anybody here? They'll be willing to admit? A couple. All right, there's a couple that taken advantage of it. It's like, oh, it's a government program, we don't want to use it. I'm just letting you know that it's out there. There's a lot of people that have done extremely well, you know, $10,000 to $20,000 in their checking account to put in fencing and water lines and pumps and solar and all sorts of things. And now they have a high tunnel program, where if you want, it's basically a greenhouse, but you're actually farming on the ground, but you're able to extend your seasons and grow food pretty much year round. Not necessarily within the greenhouse, but your normal gardening and farming. And then you have the high tunnel that you can put up and use to grow food. So I've got several customers doing this, and they're growing a tremendous amount of food. The high tunnels, the greenhouses were paid for by the NRCS, the wells were paid for, all the equipment. So if you're willing to have a little bit of patience and go through the process and application, and there's an NRCS agent in every county. We have 32 watersheds in South Carolina, and so there's a lot of government bureaucracy, and they're very protective of their money. That money's all there for you to use if you want to. You don't have to, but it's there. I just put that out there. A lot of people have taken advantage of it and have some awesome food resupply plans going on right now. So it just gives a little bit of a boost there. So anyway, we're going to talk about water and energy. Got about 18 hours. We're going to condense it into 50 minutes and hopefully have some time for some Q&A. So when I look at, again, decentralizing everything that we're fearful about, my goal is I meet a lot of fearful people, and we're That's not helpful. You know, to mitigate that fear, what do you need to do? Well, we just need to get some water. We start with some simple things. I need water, I need food, I need to regulate body temperature, I need some sort of shelter, and there's a lot of other things that go along with that, and you know, in terms of security and communication and all of that, networking. But I meet a lot of people that their priorities are not right. They have an awesome solar system. I was just 2 days ago helping them put a pump in their well. And I'm like, where's the food? You spent $32,000 on your solar system. You've got this amazing, you know, area. You live in a great place. And they didn't have any food. Literally didn't have a week's worth of food. So I had to, you know, chastise a little bit, scold in a loving way, and just say, look, I mean, he was like, show me how to do this rain catchment system. I'm like, no, I'm not going to show you. What is the rain catchment system going to do for you? What is this $32,000 awesome solar system going to do for you and your family? Because he was the patriarch. I knew a lot of patriarchs of the family. And then all the kids, grandkids are going to end up there. I said, you don't have any food. You cannot stay here. The system will do nothing. The solar doesn't make food. Your rain catchment won't make food. And so a lot of times we just get out of balance. You know, food isn't glamorous, right? It's pretty boring. But if you don't have, you know, a couple thousand calories per person per day for however long you're preparing, then you're really making a mistake. So it's important to have a good food plan in place. So when I look at solutions, I look at an infrastructure, a systems approach to, I don't care if it's a tent you live in, or an RV, or a 7,000 square foot mansion, we all need water, food, and a little bit of electricity and power is a wonderful thing, medical gear, security, communications, and so forth. So I'm going to focus on the two biggies for me, which is what I've been working on for a long time, are water solutions. I'm just fascinated with water. My wife has always said I'm having an affair with Miss Waters, because that's all I talk about with people, how to find water, how to distribute water, how to purify it, how to look at a piece of property and just like, if you did this and this, and I've been on so many, it's just the more I see, the more I figure out, but it's just a fun thing for me to try to help take the resources that you have on your property. You've got water, you've got maybe an elevation change, you've got sunlight, and you have trees. With those four resources, I think I can do anything that you need to stay alive. So how do you manipulate those? How do you take the best advantage of it? What equipment might help you do that? That's what we're going to go to. And when we talked about water, and I try to break everything I do into threes. With water, it's water stored, it's water resupply plans, and it's water purified. With food, it's how much food you have stored, how do you resupply that food supply, and then how do you preserve that food. And energy, I do the same thing, storing of energy, making your own energy, and you know, we won't get into the third one on that, it goes off on a different tangent. But so just looking at each area in these ways, we'll start with simple solutions and kind of work our way up. So everybody, how many people, do we store water? You know, we're Western North Carolina. A lot of people say, I got a well, I have a spring, I'm not going to store it. And I think that's a mistake. I think everybody should store water. There's a lot of preppers I meet that are better prepared than a lot of people that live in our area because they can't resupply. They don't have a well. They don't have springs. And they have a lot of water stored and put away for five years. They have 5 years of water storage supply plans. It's crazy, amazing amounts of water stored. So, and there's a lot of ways to do it. I don't have time to go into the details, but make sure you have a water storage plan and have water stored. Even though I have 2 springs and 2 wells and rain catchment, I still have water stored in my basement. I still have water. What if I couldn't leave the house? What if I didn't want to leave the house because of security risk to me and my family? And I need to have water on site in the house, in the structure. There's a lot of ways to do that. Like I said, you can store water easily for 5 years and it's still potable. Okay, I'm going to go through some of these. So water sources. Most of the people, let me see who I'm talking to. How many people have wells? Yeah, I love Western North Carolina. There's 2 million wells in North Carolina. So most of the people that live in North Carolina seem to have wells, but it's urban sprawl, it's being taken over, and there's more and more municipal systems. So for most of you that have a well, most of your wells are underutilized, meaning you have a 1 horsepower, 220 volt pump sitting in the bottom of that well, and that's all you have. But you have to realize that is a storage device. You have a 6 1/4 inch casing that can be whatever 100 to 700 to 800 feet in some cases or deeper. and there's a lot of water. It's a foot and a half, it's a gallon and a half per foot of that casing. There's a lot of water there. Now, how do I get that water out of there? If an EMP happens, if a cyber attack happens, if the grid goes down, how do I get the water out of there? There's a lot of ways to do that. The problem with a North Carolina well, now I know a lot of people travel from pitless adapter land, and what are you talking about? Most of the country has their water comes out of the casing, under the frost line, so you're not having to deal with freezing and piping come out. But most of North Carolina's wells are top discharge. So how do you get the water out of that well? A lot of people just say, well, I'm just going to pull that well pump out of there. Well, I've pulled a lot of well pumps. I'm probably about 500 of them, and myself. And it's not something you do easily. So a lot of people just think they're going to hook their pickup truck to it and take off and pull that wood. And what happens when you do that? Well, you break the pipe off and your well pump's stuck at the bottom and you got a mess. And so you don't want to do that. So you can, if you are able to pull it out, then you can make up your own baler buckets and get water out in that way. So I'm just going to share some simple solutions. The image on the left is your typical grid pump bladder tank, and most of the well companies are in cahoots with the filter companies. They have little tiny bladder tanks. Nobody thinks storage anymore. We live in an on-demand society, so a lot of my solutions are store. It's not hoard, right? It's store. Just store food, I store calories, I store water, I store electricity and batteries, I store water at an elevation. It gives me potential energy that I can use to fight a fire, that I can use to take a shower. So everything that I think about is storage. And technology keeps changing such we can store energy, we can store heat, phase change materials. I can take a shipping container of heat and ship it to Alaska and release the heat. There's insane technology, it's fun, I'm kind of addicted to it. It's neat to see, but a lot of these, there's new solutions that can help you and I to be better prepared for any situation. I really do not care what the scenario is. I don't know what the scenario is. I don't know if it's going to be a CME or an EMP. It doesn't really matter to me. And when you're working through these things, I mean, a lot of people, they ask me, what do you think it's going to be? What is it going to be? And when is it going to be? I have no idea. Does anybody here have any idea? Please don't raise your hand. But we don't know. But what we can do to take away the fear and to have some confidence. Boy, have I seen people's lives change by preparing. Just doing what we're all attempting to do. They've gotten in better shape, except for Richard. I don't know. Nah, just kidding. But, just for instance, a guy got an NRC high tunnel. He was sitting on a couch, about 300 pounds, and he said, I'm just dying. He bought a piece of property, put up the high tunnel. He's out there working. He's lost 65 pounds growing food. He's just the simplicity of that has changed his life. So I won't philosophize too much. I got too much to cover on this. But back to the wells. Let's get back to the wells. The grid pumps that you normally have, if you don't have electricity, you're not going to be able to get water out of that well, unless you've already done something with a generator or a solar inverter. The problem with a lot of the solar inverters, they have a hard time starting a horse and a half well pump. It just takes a serious hammer, 4 times the amperage rating of that motor to start that pump. And it can really do damage to your solar inverter. A lot of people are doing it. It's going to really take a toll on their inverter if they have to live that way. So there's a lot of things that we can basically take that system. The cool thing is, because we have a 6-inch casing, we can leave that system. It's not broke, don't fix it. You can put a lot of things in parallel with what's already in the well. You can stack 3 or 4 pumps in that well at different heights. So you can leave that alone, and then see the pump. The system on the right is just a solar pump that's in that well. So you have 1-inch pipes coming up in a 6-inch hole, so you've got a lot of room. So you just stack the pumps at different levels. So we've put one just for fun to figure it out. We were able to put 5 pumps in a well. It's a little crammed, but it was able, the guy was, I want 5 ways to get water out of my well. Okay, yes sir. And we did that. But typically what I do is I don't want to change what you already have unless I have to, or it's old. And then we'll put a solar pump in right next to it. So now, and if you have an elevation on your property, which a lot of people do have elevation changes in Western North Carolina, you take advantage of that. So the simplest system, I just throw this out there, the simplest system is to direct drive a solar pump with DC power, take that water and pump it to an elevation, and then distribute it to your farm. And the cool thing is, if you go through the NRCS and do this, later on all you do is you tee into your house and you've got water in your house or any of your dwellings from the system that's been, been paid for. So, and those two will work together, okay? So that's one way of getting water out of your well, and a lot of water out of your well. Without batteries, if you can do anything that you're doing as a prepper without batteries, the farther you are ahead. So the next thing you can do is put a hand pump in a well. A lot of people say, well, I can't. They told me I couldn't do that. None of the well guys that you'll talk to, very few. So there's a few that I've met, like Green Brothers, and a few local guys that have finally got this. But the old timers that have been putting submersible pumps in for the last 50 years say you can't do this. Well, I've done 375 of them. So I'm thankful for those guys that say they can't do it, because it's given me a lot of business. So it's very easy to put a hand pump in alongside a submersible pump. And you can go down to 300 feet. I don't recommend that after doing so many of these. Go down to about 200. I'm not talking about the depth of the well. Your well could go 2,000 foot. It's where's the water level? When you stand next to the casing, and where's the water level? Where's the top of the water? Because the top of the water is where you actually start pumping water from. You don't pump water until you hit that water-air interface. Okay, so if I can determine, so if it's only 30 feet, your well might be 300 feet deep, but your static water level or static pressure is at 30 feet. That's where we're going to start. We're going to take that hand pump and put a piston about 30 feet under that water so we don't have any issues with pumping air with drought variation and that. And it's very easy to pump the water out with a hand pump and tie it back into the house. So if you want to put water in the kitchen sink, you put that hand pump in, open a valve, and you're pumping water right into the kitchen sink. And it's very, very easy to do. Now you don't want to, somebody have done that, and there's a couple, and I won't pick on them, they're in the crowd, that they pumping up the bladder tank. Don't do that until you're done. Get all the water that you need. Fill up your tubs, fill up your containers. And it's so easy to do. You got a lot of leverage on the handle. Then when you're done, go ahead and pump up the bladder tank, because you can pump it up to 50, 60 PSI. Then you have some stored pressurized water, so you don't have to go out to the well and do that. So that's, two simple solutions. Leave your pump in the well, add a solar pump, or add a hand pump, or add any other any combination thereof. If you have a shallow well or a spring, this is another pump I found out of Italy that's been kind of a go-to for shallow well pumping. It's a very well-made pump, and you can hand pump 6 gallons a minute and pressurize the bladder tank. So if you have your water system in the basement, and you just go down the basement, turn 2 valves, and you actually pump, and it'll pull the water through your existing submersible pump if the water level is within 20 to 25 feet of the pump, or a spring, or a rain catchment, or any shallow water source. You can actually deliver water and take a shower off of this pump. It's very easy to do. Okay. And again, the solar water pump, people do not believe this. The most efficient use of solar energy in the world is water pumping. I can take 3 small 150 to 200 watt solar panels and pump water from 840 foot down up at 5 gallons a minute. It's just a very efficient thing with the right pump. So if you don't, a lot of people think, there's no way, my well's way down there. I haven't found a water situation in Georgia, North Carolina, or South Carolina that a simple solar direct drive pump will not overcome. So you might prove me wrong, but I'd like to challenge. And then, so this is kind of the thought process that I go through. What's your source of water? How many people are going to be here? How many people are potentially going to be here? Livestock, chickens, cows, pigs, goats, and of course, anybody that might show up. And then determine how much water you need, then match the pump to that. And the cool thing about this is it's been a lot of fun. There's a young couple over in Saluda, and they had 2 wells. They spent $16,000, and the well driller said you have dry holes. And they were very depressed and upset that they didn't have water. And the one well was making 10 gallons an hour, which is horrible. But you can take advantage. So if I just throw that out, if you have a well at a very low recovery, a lot of people I've run into, they have wells and they're like, it's no good. It's good. You just have to use it slow and steady. People put in 1 horsepower pumps and they want all this water instantly. If you pump slow and steady out of that casing, they're running cows now, gardens off of that 10 gallon minute well because they get ahead of it. There's a lot of water in the well. You pump to an elevated storage tank and you do it slow and steady all day long for a year. You have more water than you can ever use. So it's rewarding for me. It's exciting to see the turnaround. It's like, I spent $16,000, now I can use my $16,000 investment. I threw the money away. So if you have a low recovery water well, we can make it work. We can make it work. So going through that whole, I won't bore you with that whole process. Again, if you have shallow water sources, we can do solar water pumping too. Sometimes people don't have a hill. So for those that don't have a hill, I still want to get water out of the ground without batteries. If I'm in a long-term survival situation and the battery is kind of the heart of the system and it's kind of the weak link in the system, I don't want to rely on it. So I want to get water out of the ground, pump it into a cistern. Maybe it's at the same level as your house, but then I can hook a solar DC booster pump next to it and then boost the pressure up to what you need it to do. Whether you're doing irrigation, drip irrigation in your high tunnel or your farm or your fruit trees, or you're just taking showers, you can do that easily off of the sun. And the beautiful thing is you can match the solar panel output to the pump output, and even though I need a battery to run that booster pump, if you make hay while the sun shines, that's what I tell people, if you use your solar system while the sun is shining, then your battery isn't being used at all. If it's sized correctly, you're just passing that amperage through. That battery is just a buffer. It's just regulating the voltage. It's not doing anything. You're not hurting the battery. You're not adding to it or taking away. You're just passing that solar energy onto a pressurized bladder tank. So that's very important to do. I have a customer who's a dairy farmer, still hard to find, but a dairy farmer, and he does everything at his house in the dark. He goes to work in the dark. Everything he does electrically is in the dark. He's my worst customer from a battery standpoint. He just killed because everything he does when the sun's not shining electrically. So he's my best battery tester. But think about it. In a grid down, you're going to be home. You're going to be doing things. If you do things when the sun is shining, you can have batteries that are old. I've got a guy I know. He's got a flooded lead acid battery that's 21 years old, but he does everything when the sun is shining. And so it's very important. We would adjust our lifestyle. If you learn how the solar system works and the water system and the infrastructure works, you just adjust to it and it will last for a long, long time. And these aren't things that you buy and put on a shelf. Everything that I'm talking about, these are solutions that you live with every day. They work. Don't buy solutions. I see everybody doing it. They buy a kit, a solar generator, and they put it on the shelf. And when you need it, and they pull it off and it doesn't work because the battery's dead or they didn't size it correctly, it's going to be a rough day. So I don't like rainy day systems. Put the system in, make it work, live off of it, because it'll last a long, long time. Okay, irrigation, there's all sorts of irrigation. Spring development, how many people have springs on their property? A good number of us have springs. All right, spring's a great thing. If you develop your spring, who's living off of their spring? Okay, still quite a few. Yeah, there's the old school way of doing it, and there's a very new, inexpensive way of doing it, and that's using North Carolina water tanks, spring box and collection system. You're going to spend less than $300 and have a system that will filter the water and protect it, allow you to maintain it, and you can do it in a weekend. It's just a lot of hand work. This isn't, the guy's like, oh, I gotta get the excavator in there and start digging. No. And everybody wants, get the machine in there. It's not a well, it's a spring. And if you give that water and that natural spring a place to go where you don't want it to go, it's going to go. And so it's just a hand digging type of a project. And you bring in materials, you make a dam, you collect it, you're making the water go to a place where it's easy for it to go. The path is going to take the path of least resistance, and that's what you're doing in a spring development job. And then having that spring box to kind of pull the lid off and check it out and maintain it, and it works great. You can pass like 5,000 gallons of water a day if you have that much water through that spring system. And springs are wonderful. It just takes a little bit of work to do the development correctly. And then rain catchment, of course, it's my least favorite water. And it's fun when you first do it, it all works and it's great, but it's very hard to keep maintained. It's very hard to keep it, when the pollen's high or the bug, it can become a frog pond quickly. But you can, it takes a lot more filtration, but it's still, if you want to have redundancies, rain catchment works. But like I told the other guy, not before you get some food. You need to get food. Okay, and then I'm going to keep going. I'm going to run out of time. And then some other ways, we're getting into more mechanical. When it comes to EMP mitigation, how do you beat an EMP? Well, as a mechanical engineer, I was like, well, that's easy. Just use mechanical things. Nothing that has a printed circuit board in it, nothing that's electronic. So I'm going to go old school on mechanical gizmos, like old tractors, old engines, old motors, things without printed circuit boards. And this is my favorite, oldest toy, tool, the hydraulic ram pump invented in the late 1700s. Mine's been running since 1998. Yes, I prepared for Y2K. So I'll just be confessed there. But I put that ram pump in there. I'm like, I'm going to have water. I'm going to find a way. My water was below where I lived and where my cows and chickens were. I had springs and a pond. And the water sources were below where I was. So how do I get this water up there? So that's what started my fondness with finding water and moving it around. And so the hydraulic ram pump, it's been pumping for 20 years. And I rebuilt it once, didn't have to, just wanted to. And I painted it because it was starting to look a little rough down there. And but it'll run. It's running now. It runs and thumps away 24/7. So if you have a water source that is falling, a stream, a spring that produces enough water, if you can do a spring and a ram pump, you have in Western North Carolina. It's awesome. We did one in Maggie Valley, 7 gallons a minute coming out of a spring to a container that runs to the ram pump. The ram pump pushes the water up 130 feet to a buried cistern, and it comes back down to an underground shelter. So it's just down, up, down, and a pressurized EMP-proof mechanical solution. So I don't care what the EMP is going to do; it's not going to touch. It's going to touch that. So we start with old school. This is how water, when it was decentralized in the United States. These are what farmers used to move water around from the early 1800s, and in the 1865. They came in with a double-acting ram where you could use your creek dirty water to drive the ram, but it would take spring water and pump it into your house. It's called a double-acting ram, and the waters wouldn't mix. So you could actually take showers, have pressurized water mechanically. There's nothing gonna stop it, except for a fish or a turtle or a frog that gets in the intake. I did have to say, why is my ram not working? And I went down there with the filter on the inside of my pond had eroded, and I had a fish stuck inside the ram pump. And like I did have to take it apart and figure it out. But so everything takes maintenance. I did have a video of this, but I don't have it today. So these are just some of the designs. I just love to design water systems. So we did one out on the porch a little while ago. The gentleman had a lot of fun with that. So if you need help, let me know. The river pump. This is another apparatus that has been used for a long time. Having a little bit of a problem with the company that's making them now. And they've been around forever. Basically, it's a pump that grabs air, grabs water, grabs air. So if you just have a river or a stream that doesn't have a fall to it, you can use use the river to drive this pump, and it will pump water, and it will pump it for a long, long ways. We just have had some problems lately, so I'm very reluctant to say that it's perfect, because the only company that I know that makes it, the pump's not working right. But it is a technology that's been around for a long time. Okay, let's move on to purification. Purification, I'm just going to say a couple things on, we all should have, I think filtration for us in North America is probably the easiest way to deal with water. Our water is relatively clean. We're not dealing with any viral load for the most point. That, as far as I know, you can correct me if I'm wrong, there are viral level filters. The Lifesaver, again, the British are way ahead of us. British Berkefeld, Berkey, Dalton, Lifesaver, LifeStraw, all British companies. Their water's a lot worse than ours, so they got very innovative quickly on how to treat and purify their water. So if you're worried about viruses, you're worried about worst case scenario, the Lifesaver does a really good job. It's a nanotechnology type filter. It's hydrophobic. It's actually fears water. And the filter actually, you have to pump the water through the filter because it's so small, but no virus can even get through it. It's standard equipment, standard issue from what I'm told on by the British military. They have a jerry can on their Humvee, and they have the bottle on their person. So it's an amazing technology. They're expensive. Not really required for us. If you have some sort of good, whether it's a Berkey or Dalton type of filter, you can handle almost any biological issue. And I tell you, make sure you have some filtration. You cannot afford to get sick in a long-term grid down situation. So your water source might be great. And even with well water, I would just encourage you, if things are really bad, you just can't afford to get sick, right? So go ahead and filter the water. Run it through the Berkey. Run it through the Dalton. I prefer a gravity-fed system where I can fill it and let it, do its 14 to 20 gallons a day. that's the way to go. So there's a lot of, you can do some homemade filters and all that, but Berkey's probably the most well-marketed, but there's a lot of other, like Dalton is $100 cheaper and is actually geared towards, Berkey's geared towards water with chlorine in it. So if you're already dealing with a naturally occurring source, why the black Berkey doesn't do anything for you because you're not taking chlorine out of your water. You're just dealing with biologicals. So the Dalton, even if it's a better filter too, the Super Sterisil. So I'm not, if you're a Berkey dealer, forgive me. And then a lot of it just, pool shock. Everybody's like, oh, I hate chlorine. Well, I hate getting sick. So they're like, wow, the chlorine is horrible. I'm like, yes, but so is the protozoa, the giardia, and everything else is going to render you useless to help your family if you're that kind of sick. So $4, less than $4 for a 1 pound bag of granular pool shock that treats 10,000 gallons. So if you have 10,000 gallons of water in a swimming pool or containers, you take that granular pool shock, you spend a whole $4. Now you can run it through a carbon filter after that and remove the chlorine. But the most important thing is nobody's going to get sick drinking that water. So if you have a swimming pool or something like that, you need to, unless it's a bromine pool or a salt pool, a chlorine pool, you can shock the water and then live off it. I do not like my swimming pool because if you have one, you know how much trouble they are to take care of. But I look at that's my fire. That's where I can fight fires. I fight fires with my swimming pool, and I've got 20,000 gallons of water that I can use to stay alive, stay clean, and take care of a lot of people. All right. So let's talk a little bit about energy. Let's talk a lot about energy. You need energy for a lot of things. Richard mentioned the propane for cooking. And that's the other thing I'll just say for cooking. A lot of people overlook this, tremendously overlook it. I see people with years and years supplies of food, and I'm looking around, I'm always looking for an assessment. A lot of people ask me to grade them or quiz them based on the Doomsday Prepper stuff work we did. And I look around for how are they going to cook this? To take 25-year freeze-dried food, Thrive, Wise, Mountain House, whatever you have, and to take that and reconstitute it takes what? A lot of water. Now I need a lot of BTUs to actually eat it. I was like, oh, I'm just going to do a crock pot and do my rice and beans. Crock pot burns up 300 watts an hour. And for a 12-hour recipe, that's 3,600 watts. And that little solar generator will only make about 1,200 watts that day. It's just math, and it's going to be very discouraging when people realize that they get 1 cup of coffee a week. It's going to be rough. So you just really got to figure out, like Richard said, figure out what you need. How many people, how many showers, how much fuel do you need? Well, how am I going to cook all this? People that advertise water and make distilled water distillers, and you might have bought some. It takes a tremendous amount of energy to distill water. Okay, I'm not going to get into the health benefits. Boy, I start a fight here. Probably. You're going to die if you drink distilled. No, you won't. It's the best thing ever. And I love those. But how are you going to actually do the distillation? They say, oh, I'm going to turn my electric stove on. No, you don't have electricity. I'm going to turn on propane. You are not going to waste your propane trying to distill that water. You will waste a lot of fuel. And back to cooking or canning. How do you do it? And I would highly recommend that you do it on wood. Whatever you do, find a biomass stove that you're comfortable with, that you're good with, you're not going to burn the place down with, and that you can can. They're so easy to can. All-American canner, using a rocket stove or a gasification downdraft gasifier stove, and you can can without a problem. There's no problem with it. We have unlimited biomass in our areas, wood, sticks, twigs. And so can you prepare that food? If you have 2 years worth of food to take care of your family, I rarely find anybody that has 2 years worth of the ability to cook that food. Hardly ever. They have, well, I'm just going to, some have thought that, I'll just take bricks or concrete blocks and make a rocket stove. That's cool, that's fine, as long as you know how to do that. But some will bring out their 3 bottles of propane. I'm like, well, you're good till Thursday. Now what are we going to do? You have a lot of food. It's going to be real crunchy, because you can't. Very hard. You're going to be drinking a lot of water. So have a cook. And these things are boring. If I was talking about guns and ammo and had 50 cal and showing people all this stuff, it's real sexy, right? food and water. I'm the boring infrastructure guy, but I'm just thinking people are not going to make it if they don't have enough calories, they don't have enough food for hydration, sanitation, cooking. You know, think about it. You can easily can all your resupply, all this awesome food that you're growing, and you need to can it. You can do it on a biomass stove. Don't waste your propane. You save your propane when you don't feel good. You know what don't feel good? You just want to push the button to cook. You save that propane for the day that, you know, I'll take the shower off of propane, not off of wood today. Or I'm going to can on the propane stove. But you save that because it's not going to be able to be resupplied. Okay, so fuels. We mentioned propane already. Richard gave me a great lead in. Propane is awesome. It's wonderful. If you're dealing with wanting to be off grid for a period of time, say a year, having a good balance of propane and solar will allow you to do that pretty easily. And it stores forever. Pretty much stores forever. We were talking, Richard worked for a natural gas company. We're talking about being able to take, and some people have done this where you get one big propane tank, say 300, 500 gallon tank, and be able to gravity feed to the smaller propane cylinders. That's kind of a side tangent, but that's been done. You can actually do that. You can't put as many, you can't put the full 4.5 gallons in, but you can actually fill them. So fuels. When it comes to fuels, because you know, we're on energy and on storage, so propane's easy to store. It's just finite. And then your gas and your diesel, you know, have gotten worse and worse. So you have to adjust how you. Forever, awesome. All right, so make sure, you know, with anything, like when I store food, I don't start with some cheap food. I want to start with the best product I can find. Same with fuel. I want to start with the highest octane, no non-ethanol gasoline, find the best fuel I can. The best fuel that I can find is at our local airport. It's 100 LL, it's avgas, it's $4 a gallon, but I don't care because it'll last me 5 years. If I go down to a gas station and buy gasoline, it's, you know, if it's got ethanol in it, it's good for about a month before it starts messing with the carburation and some of my equipment. So I want to start with a very good, high-quality fuel. And then the diesel, I throw that picture up there because that's not how you want to store fuel outside. Water is the #1 enemy of your diesel fuel. Condensation, heating up during the day, condensing. Heating up and cooling, heating and cooling, puts water in the tank, causes bacterial growth, algae growth in the tank. And unless you have a really tremendous amount of biocide to kill everything, you're going to have a problem, especially with any modern diesel injectors. If you get old school, you know, go old school generators and you're a diesel guy and you know how to fix them, and you know, they'll run just about anything. They'll run on water, they'll run vegetable oil, they'll run a mixture of all sorts of things, paint thinner, gas. Be careful. All right, so storing energy. Batteries are mysterious to a lot of people. There's a whole art to batteries. Battery technology is getting better and better and better. You know, Tim mentioned these little lithium-ion jump boxes, and they're impressive. Lithium-ion is coming. This 380-volt world. They used to say 60 volts would kill you, so they just went ahead and made it 380. It kill you much faster. So that's what I'm working with now, some 380-volt systems. And I'm like, am I really hooking this up? It's 380 volts. And I'm like, I was told that was bad. So the Tesla cars, telecommunications, heating and air, there's all this 380 volt stuff going on right now. But I'm still, for most people, the 12, 24, and 48 volt systems they're still here to stay. The 48 volt whole house system is going to be here for a long while because the lithium ion batteries still cost almost 5 to 10 times, depending on the brand, more than a flooded lead acid battery. So I still think lead acid is still here to stay. So anyway, I have customers that are so good, and they check specific gravity, and they keep their batteries full with distilled water, and there are other ones that are like, I don't know what that is. And then I'll go look at the system, and the lights are dimming, and then nothing will come on, and they won't touch the battery. And that's my mistake. I gave them the wrong battery. I got to match the battery to the personality. You know, it's kind of like, what kind of person are you? All right, you get an AGM battery. You get a flooded lead acid battery. You have the money, and you don't want to do anything. You get the lithium ion. But there's, you know, it depends on who you are, what you're willing to do in terms of maintenance. But if you're willing to be the guy that checks and you're very meticulous, flooded lead acid battery, you can get 20 years out of it if you baby it and know what you're doing. Other people just abuse it. They just think they have unlimited power. You know, we all have 200 amp for the average person, 200 amps of service coming to your house. But the systems that we're putting in, we're able to run an entire house of less than 50 amps. Right appliances, right tool for the job, no compressors and motors that have to hammer on to start up. Any American house, we've done it, any house for under 50 amps, run everything to keep everybody happy and comfortable, have all the modern conveniences. It's just there's just a lot of waste, and so anyway, that's another rant. Wood, store wood. That's another. This is like gold to me to have piles of wood around my house, covered, dry, seasoned, ready to go. Because this is how I heat my house, heat my water, and it's how I cook and can. And if I have time to play with gasification, run tractors and trucks and motorcycles. But that's another story. Having your wood stored is important to be at least a year ahead. You want it seasoned, because when you go by the house that has smoke coming out of the chimney, guess what? 50%, all of that coming out of there, most of that is all water. So they did not cut their wood ahead of time, they didn't season it. So when you see the locomotive neighbor's house, that's somebody got behind on their wood. How many people are ahead on their wood 2 years? They're all over 60 years old. It takes till you're 60 years old to figure that out. Because the young guys are scavenging through the woods. I'm sorry if I insulted somebody that's not 60. But for the most part, I think the old timers have figured out, it's like, why am I wasting, why am I killing my back? Why am I going through so many chainsaws? Cut the wood once, season it, get a couple years ahead. The wood, I burn so much less wood, I burn so much less calories. I don't have to go see the chiropractor as much. But wood is kind of not, you gotta, like anything, as a preparedness mindset, you're thinking ahead. It's this chess game of thinking ahead, storing up water, food, power, wood, that energy in a variety of forms. So you can do a lot with this. We have this resource abundant. Richard talked on propane. You can do so much with propane. Your refrigeration, your generators, your hot water heating, lights. It's endless, but it's limited. So you got to be careful. This is when you put your wood systems and your solar systems. They're your propane stretchers. It's nice to have a hot water heater. It's nice to have something to cook on that's propane. But have other ways to do it that you can take care of. Let's make some power. I skipped that first one real quick, which is a hand crank and a bicycle generator. So just let me know you can do that, but we'll move on. This is some of the new gizmos out. Energy harvesting. You can take a thermoelectric generator, set it on a wood stove, and charge your batteries. So I've got a customer, and he's my favorite. He's in a favorite case study for this. He's in Alaska, and for 8 months out of the year, he's on solar, and then for 4 months, he's in darkness. And so I got him two of the thermoelectric generators, the one up in the upper right-hand corner there, and he puts them on his wood stove because it's running all the time because it's very cold, and he charges the same battery bank that he was charging on the solar. So they work, they're just slow and steady, but if you have a heat source, you can turn the heat source into electricity. And then generators. A lot of times I'll tell people, just go get yourself a little Honda. You don't know what to do, and you don't want to be stressed out, just get a Honda 2000 EU. My brother's been off-grid for 2 years off of a Honda 2000 EU. He said he bought 2 of them. He got 13 months he's running. He runs them 24/7. He changes the oil every 3 days. And remember the oil, spark plugs, and filters, everybody always thinks about fuel, but there's a lot of other things that go along with it. But they're the toughest little generator, and quiet and easy. And I just tell people to get one because it takes a lot of stress off. Everybody's worried about their solar system doing more complicated. If I've got that little Honda, it always starts, and it's going to keep me from losing my food. And 1 gallon of gas lasts about 9 hours. He says 12. I think he's lying to me. I get about 9 hours out of a gallon of gasoline. You can convert them to propane very easily. It avoids the warranty, but you're on propane now. 1 gallon of propane. It's comparable. You get a little bit more out of it with propane. But you can do a lot in 9 hours, can't you? With 2,000 watts. I mean, you should be able to do a lot. Run your freezers and stuff for 3, 4 hours, whatever it takes to keep things frozen, and then do wash, do laundry, do whatever you got to do. You just got to adjust your life, and you could live. My brother's been proof of it. For 2 years, he's lived off a little Honda. So you don't need to have a lot. Now, if you step it up, you can companion these Hondas. They can stack and companion. If you get the companion model, you can put 3 of them together. You get a continuous 4,800 watts. Convert to propane. If you don't have anything, and you go down to Lowe's or Home Depot and buy the Generac, That's, it's fine. Your neighbors from 7,500 miles away will hear it. So that's the only problem. They're noisy. They don't last very long. But I'd rather have it than not have anything, to have some electricity. And then if anybody has a tractor, this is a great option. Anybody got a tractor with a diesel engine? Even if it's a tractor that just looks really bad, but the PTO shaft turns at 540 RPMs, you can run a PTO generator that will make from 10 to 50,000 watts of power. They use it a lot of times in chicken houses and stuff. I gave one to my dad for Christmas. He runs it off an old Massey. You don't even have to have a tach. You just set it by the little meter on it, sets it to 60 hertz. He runs it's an all-electric home, runs everything, nothing. It doesn't even bog the tractor down. The bigger, the older the tractor, the better. It's got a lot of torque. It'll plow through any startup of any motor, furnace, fan, electric stove, hot water heater, you name it. So for about under $2,000, you just bought yourself a 16,000 watt diesel generator. Go buy a diesel generator at that. You're going to spend 16 grand to 20,000 for a decent Kubota or Kohler, something like that. Then you get into the standby generators. You get into the Generacs, which are the cheapest of all generators. They just do their marketing well, and you work your way up through the Briggs & Stratton, the Kohlers, the Cummins, Onan, and they're only about $500 difference, so buy a good one. But they have a place. They can run everything in your house. A lot of people don't realize. They just let them. The power goes out. What do? They let it run. They let it run. Oh, guess what? They let it run through the weekend. What do? They just burn up all their propane. You can actually go outside and turn it off. We're so addicted to electricity. But there's 20,000 watts coming out of that. Yeah, guess what you're doing? All you're doing right now is charging your cell phone. It's kind of a little bit wasteful, I think, right now. So you just gotta, think about the usage of these devices. How long do I actually have to run? If I only have to run for 4 hours a day, well, then I just made my propane storage go 6 times longer than people usually run these. And then you can go the full prime machines that have 30 to 40,000 hour life, 1,800 RPM, quiet diesel or propane. That's a serious generator. So if you're so inclined and have the resources, that's just something that's so reliable, it's always going to work. That's another choice. Okay, oh man, there's so much. Solar, I'll just say something with solar. I mean, I recommend everybody build their own little solar system, just so that they don't get ripped off by the solar company that comes along trying to quote you and rip you off with a, trying to put solar on the north side of your roof. There's plenty of those going on. So build your own, and it's all the same. Solar panels, charge controller, battery, to an inverter, to whatever you want to run. So go ahead and build your own, and spend $400. You'll always use it, even if you're just charging batteries for devices, for flashlights or night vision or security systems, Dakota alerts or whatever, and I just need a battery charger. Those are great. You build your small little system, and it's a great AA, AAA, 1, 2, 3, whatever batteries you're using that you charge with solar. But you've learned. So when the guy comes to try to, tell you that you need this, you're going to be able to say why. Tell me about the battery. What kind of battery is it? How many amp hours is it? Why is this solar panel? How many watts does it put out? And why is this charge controller so cheap? I don't want it. So you can go through that whole system, and once you do that, it's very helpful for later on. So I still have the portable systems I've got. I mean, I have this one on the right. I've had it in my basement for 4 years running a refrigerator. A freezer. All it does is make ice. I make ice. I thought ice would be nice in a grid down situation, so I have a freezer dedicated to ice. I can take that ice and move it to any other person's refrigerator and keep their food. So it does it with DC, it does it with solar, it's done it for 4 years. It's just a big old, it's my ice house. But it's done off a portable solar generator. As long as you don't try to run things, if the math is done right, and your expectations are that thing's going to run your whole house, it just has to be done correctly.
How many watts to run that system?
What's that?
How many watts to run that DC?
Refrigerator?
Yeah.
The freezer? It's 35. It's 35. It's a DC. It's a very thick.
How many watts of solar do you have?
I only have 280. Yeah, so you can get really efficient on start with the appliance. Make sure the appliance is good, at least Energy Star, and then match the amount of solar and battery you need to it. So you can take something like this, and it'll last for years and years and years and work well. And then we work our way up into, well, here's just an example of charging batteries. And then we get into bigger systems. This changes every few months. I get a new inverter, more information. So if you're interested in this, this is the latest, greatest we installed. It's a Magnum off-grid inverter, but then they came out with this grid-tied inverter with it. So we put the two together. We can get, now you can do hybrid battery backup and net metering for the same price that you used to do just off-grid. So this changes a lot. So if you're interested in solar, you know, let me know. A lot of people, you know, just have done the research from a few years ago. Just know that this industry changes very fast, and it does. The electronics are getting better, the batteries are getting better, nothing gets cheaper. Well, this is a little bit cheaper. And then, we don't have time to go into that. Hydro, this is where I've spent a lot of my time in the last year to do what is happening inside this building. If we were here, how would we all do if there was no air conditioning in this building? What would happen? Some people would have health problems, right? Some people couldn't. I have a customer, she has MS. If she's not below a certain temperature, she's very sick quickly. And so air conditioning, it's, you know, some people are pretty tough and don't need it, but I meet a lot of people that really need it. There are places in our country, if there wasn't electricity and air conditioning, they would die quickly. So come up with, we have like 5 different ways to do air conditioning off of solar. And I'm not trying to air condition this whole space. You know, I want to air condition maybe the master bedroom, maybe an office, a place where I can go to, and just where everybody can get a good night's sleep. Because if I can't sleep, I'm not going to do very well at pulling security, am I? So having air conditioning is very important. So there are chillers out there. I just can't go into all of it, so it's just too exciting. Just like we're driving. I was like, really? That's exciting? Yes, it is. Being able to run my air conditioner directly off a solar panel is very exciting to me. You know, so when people, you know, especially the wives, you know, my wife's like, if you don't have air conditioning here, I'm not going to be very happy. So what did I do? I ripped all the air conditioning out of my house this summer to put on a chiller. So I'm not too smart, I'm just confessing. To make this change, to make this move, these new hydronic chillers are for residents. Now you hear about chillers in a commercial setting, but now they have residential ones that run off of solar. And so imagine being able to be off-grid, run and cool, and the byproduct is hot water. So you get your domestic water and cooling and heating from a chiller that I can run off of solar. I can't run any of your heat pumps. Who's got heat pumps? How many people are on heat pumps? Most, probably everybody, or people don't want to raise their hand and admit it, but most everybody heat pumps. You can't start any of those heat pumps with a solar system. Why? Because they have a thing called locking rotor amp. Those compressors can be 80 to 120 amps to start that, and it just won't turn. You're not going to get air conditioning with solar. Because people say, well, just give me a quote to run my house off of solar. I always get that, and it's usually about $100,000. And they're like, what are you talking about? I said, for me to build, you have 2 heat pumps or 3 heat pumps. And if I add all that up, and I've got to punch those things with a battery and start those compressors, I need to stack up this many inverters and this many batteries and this many panels, because now you're your power plant. You're not Duke Power. You have to make your own power plant to start those motors in their worst case locking rotor amp position. So all of these things are inverters. You see that in you see inverter on the refrigerator, inverter air conditioner, inverter mini split. We're finally getting there. They've had it for 30 years in Europe. So when you see these mini splits and stuff around, those I can start, because they start up at 0, just like the solar water pumping. Start at 0 and ramp up to the load, and I ramp down, and I meet the demand. I can do that on solar. So you can do solar air conditioning. It's finally arrived. Refrigeration, and I'm going to stop there. I brought my little kilowatt meter. This solves a lot of problems for people, because people don't know how much power they're actually using. Well, how much, if I'm going to build my little solar system, I'll plug this into the wall, this kilowatt meter, and plug your refrigerator in, and after a week it'll tell you how much power it used. Divide that by 7, that's how much power that refrigerator used for the day. And now I'm going to figure out, well, I got 4 hours of sunshine in North Carolina, in Waynesville on average year round, and I'm going to figure out how many solar panels I need. I'm going to add some just for inefficiencies from solar, DC to AC, from DC to AC and back. And so this little meter, $15 to $20, it's a kilowatt meter. You you can figure out what everything needs. So I said, I really want to have my refrigerator. I need to have my CPAP machine, somebody might say, or a medical device. I need to have a washing machine. I'm going to go through 6 things that I really have to have. Figure out what they use. Then from that point, work backwards to how many solar panels, how many batteries, so that you know you're, for one thing, you're not getting ripped off by somebody that's saying this is what you need, that you actually know. These don't cost anything. And they also find out which appliances in your house you should get rid of right now. Because I had a great big chest freezer, put a cow in it, put a deer in it, you know, thing's awesome. So I plug this in, and you can go buy a new chest freezer that uses half the power. So if energy becomes an issue, you find out with a very simple tool. All right, let's do some Q&A. Do we have any time? Yeah. Got some time for some Q&A? Because I've got too many other slides to cover. So, any questions about water, about power? This thing is called a kilowatt. K-I-L-L-A-watt. W-A-T-T. Easy. There's a couple other ones now out on the market that are similar to this. You can't think of the other one right now.
My question is about the water.
Yes, ma'am.
It doesn't get stagnated. How could you store water for a period of time before?
How can you store for long term?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have some on my table. It's called Aquamira. It's a 2-part solution. You can, if you had a 55-gallon drum and you added this Aquamira to it, it'll be good for 5 years. The Mormons have tested it for 7. Be absolutely fine. They tested it. So you can store the water. Now, if you have water for years and you just replace it, so it doesn't, you don't. If you have city water, community water, well water coming, you can replace it. But there's no, to not have water is just not an option. And you can store it for a long time. And then that's when I bring the filters. I would still filter that water that I store just to make sure I don't get sick.
You mentioned air conditioner. What about those little, like portable room air conditioners? You run the pipe out the window?
Yes. Okay.
How do they work?
Yeah, there's the question about air conditioners, the portable ones that you plug in, they got a pipe that goes out the window. Now, the single pipe ones don't ever buy. They're the most inefficient air conditioner out there, no matter what they say. Because what they're doing is they're pulling a negative vacuum on, that's redundant. They're pulling a vacuum on that room. So you can pull hot air through your attics and into that room. It feels good, it's cold, right? I can put my thermometer on, it says 35 degrees right there at the coil. But it's pulling heat from other places that you don't want it to. The dual hose type, they bring air in and out, so there's an exchange, so you're not pulling a vacuum on the space. So you might be saving yourself a little bit of money, but you're fooling yourself because now you just pulled a bunch of hot air in from your attic or a hot area because you're pulling a vacuum on the room. Believe it or not, the window shakers that we always used to criticize for their inefficiencies are so good right now. 12,000 BTU or 1 ton window shaker, I call them. Window unit, and they're very, very good. They're not bad. We have a dual hose inverter compressor one that's called Climax Air, and that's the one I've been running for about 2 years, and that works extremely well. Their quote is it's the most efficient portable air conditioner in the world. That's how they market it. And but it's a dual hose. They work, but you won't go. To have a small window unit in a bedroom. We've done a lot of solar systems, and the customer's like, I don't know what in the world you're talking about. And I have no idea what that inverter, what any of this means. If I don't have air conditioning, I'm not going to be happy. I'm not paying you. So we, provide some small portable air conditioners in that case, and that works good. And they're very happy. They actually pay.
I saw your video on solar panel susceptibility to EMPs, and I was wondering, can they be rebuilt? If you stock diodes and other things like that, have you ever?
Only an electrical engineer would answer that question.
No, I'm just kidding. He's the guy that watches your videos.
That was a question. I was wondering if you could stock parts to build those.
Yeah, you could, yes, if you're capable of building your own and buying solar cells and series them all together, and I recommend doing it before to actually do it. You can build your own solar panel, yes. I would rather put a cheap solar panel. Solar panels keep coming down. Anybody in this room can buy panels for under $1 a watt. So why would I build a solar panel? Well, just because if I had the time and wanted to, cool, make a video. Buy panels and put them away in a Faraday cage. build your own Faraday cage. You can buy a pallet of panels for probably 75 cents a watt, and you don't have to do anything. If the ones that you had fried, which they've proven that most solar panels are very tough and not as susceptible to EMP, because they blasted them and bombarded them, and any panels that are on the space station are getting hammered, and they're still working just fine. So we didn't talk about EMP mitigation. There is an inverter called Solar that was designed, that you've watched my videos, and we put in several of those. You know, I don't have an EMP gun where I go around blasting panels and seeing it improve. So as an inverter system, it works. It's in, it works. If an EMP happens, it's supposed to mitigate E1, E2, and E3 threats to it. By putting the solar panels, you put ferrite cores right up in the junction box, it sends the pulse back to the unit. It was designed like the way the military has to operate. You can't build a Faraday cage around a rocket. So all the electronics are hardened to the point where they have enough shielding effectiveness to knock that pulse down where it doesn't roast the components on the board. That's the whole thing. If you want to build a solar panel, I would just buy one. It's so much cheaper. Solar panels are the cheapest part of a solar system now. There's so much competition, and they've worked. I've got panels that are good. At 18 years, they're still putting out plenty of power. Saying they haven't degraded. They're usually good for 25 years. They're
Harbor Freight. Harbor Freight. Harbor Freight.
No. I won't go that far. Amorphous panels are if it's a learning tool for your kids, okay. But they're just, you know, there's just no power there. You're fooling yourself, Richard.
I see some advertisements online for these apparently highly efficient routers that you can put in a string, a continuous stream on our property that can generate electricity, or in the air. And I just don't know, are they worth anything? Are they useless?
Yeah, there's a lot of things that are advertised that are defying physics. So if you want to make water, power off of water, and some of you might have a situation, just write this down. It's volume times fall divided by 10. And I don't care if you use a efficient rotor, a water wheel, an undershot, a Pelton, a Turgo wheel, you can't, you're not going to beat that. So if I have 25 gallons of water falling 40 feet, that's going to make me 100 watts, about 2,400 watts a day, no matter what I do, what kind of nozzle. There's a lot of neat gadgets, you know, throw that in the stream. You can't, there's no head pressure, there's no head there. It's spinning, but as soon as you put a load on it, guess what it does? Stop spinning. So you can't defy, there's a lot of gimmicks in power generation.
How about triple charging the battery?
Yes, triple charging, yes, but the way these things get advertised, this is going to run the neighborhood. You know, and it won't kill the fish. That's their marketing angle. But anyway, yes, sir.
How many feet ahead do you need to set the fence off to get 1 kW?
To get 1 kW, you gotta work that back for
That's kilowatt. I'll talk you down.
what diameter penstock? Or what?
I'm just saying how many feet.
Okay, it's the same formula. Right? Volume times fall divided by 10. So how high is the penstock? The output is 1 kW, so I got to multiply that by 10. I don't know the fall. There's too many variables, but it is volume times fall divided by 10 equals 1 kilowatt. So how much fall, how much volume, and once you have, I'd say it's 20 gallons a minute, then what size pipe can handle that without any friction loss. Probably a 3-inch penstock on that, but you can do that. Yes, question? I can't see. One more. Up top? I can't see. Okay. Can you start something easier? They say you have an appliance and he's saying, can you lower the startup amperage? Yes, it's called an IntelliStart by Hyper Engineering. Water Furnace bought it out. It's called an IntelliStart, and I put it in on a water heater pump, and it dropped the startup amps in half. It's really awesome. It's like when you try to ride a bicycle and you start the pedal position, it figures out what is the best place to start turning that pedal. And it's called an IntelliStart. It keeps indexing until it finds, okay, That's where the amperage is going to be the lowest, and it punches that motor and it turns it and starts it. So the only one that I've seen is there are startup caps, but the only gizmo that I can actually hook into something I've seen is the IntelliStart by Waterfirm. Down to half force is what I've seen. I don't think it'll go that low. It's made like for a compressor. If I wanted to take my 5 horsepower compressor in my shop and be able to run it off my inverter, I can't. My inverter will not start that compressor right now. But if I put the IntelliStart on it, it'll drop it. Search YouTube for the IntelliStart, and it'll show you the graphs and how it lowers the power of your device you're trying to run, so you can actually do it off of a smaller generator off of solar. Quit hiding behind that light, Tony. Nice, Tony. Any other questions? Uh-oh, I'm about to get yanked up. Well, time is up. Well, I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Skinny there. Mine. All right. Set up here for our next speakers. One more thing to show you here. There it is. Another little filler bit why Skinny and Scott are changing their mics and stuff is wanted to show you a little something here. Wanted to show you a raid grenade. Everybody know what that is? That's like roach fogger. Interesting story how I come upon this little cherry of an idea. I had a groundhog that had got up underneath my deck back of my house, and actually got there and in a shed that's right down from my house, right down in the backyard. And seen the thing, and I was chasing it around because I'd see it run over there and I'd try to get it out. And I tried to catch it out in the open, never could. So I said, well, I'll smoke it out like a VC in a tunnel. So I went and got them little round sulfur smoke bombs. Put that thing on.